Thanks for tuning in to the HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda. The HR Uprising is focused on helping forward-thinking people professionals deliver real lasting value in their organisations. I'm a chartered psychologist, speaker and trainer, and recently authored the best-selling business book, How to Be a Change Superhero. My day job is founder and CEO of software and training business Actus. This gives me the opportunity to work with other businesses like yours. We are focused on building a better workplace for people wherever they are located, with the help of our performance, learning and talent management software and our training and consultancy services. Every week on the podcast, I will be covering different topics and challenges, joined by relevant experts and real-life people professionals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy and get value from this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of HR Uprising. And actually, this is being recorded on July the 2nd and due to go out on July the 8th because it's a highly timely issue. I'm absolutely delighted to have Kevin Monroe here with me. We met through LinkedIn a few years ago and he's the absolute force of positivity. And I had a lovely, lovely chat with him, but he hasn't been on the podcast before. And I mean, I'm going to let Kevin explain what he does, but basically he's a gratitude guru. Now that might sound a little bit wah-wah, but ultimately it's about helping you with engagement, helping just general positivity. And I know Kevin will tell us why practicing gratitude personally and professionally is going to be something that could help us in the workplace and in our careers. So I'm really grateful to have Kevin just popped up in my LinkedIn feed. I thought, do you know what? This is a year 2024 when I want to get on and join in with this whole program that you're doing, which is Don't Wait to Thank. And we'll hear about this. And I'm hoping that some of you listeners will be inspired to jump on during July and take part in the program. So Kevin, sorry, that's a long introduction. You introduce yourself and a bit more about what you do.
Okay, Lucinda, I have to tell you, when I heard you mention two dates, July 2nd recording, July 8th release, we want to come back. I want to talk about how significant July 2nd and 8th are in my journey. So
Okay.
that took me by surprise.
Serendipity.
Like, wow. Oh, anyway, thank you for inviting me to HR Uprising. And I want to say thank you for listening, you that are listening in this moment, because Lucinda, they're now well over 1 million podcasts. So there's a lot of choice. And the fact that you've chosen to listen to this podcast and this episode of this podcast is not an accident. There's something really remarkable about this. So I want to say thank you for listening to us, to our conversation. And I really invite you to think of it as you pull up a chair and join Lucinda and I as we talk about this. So Lucinda, to introduce myself, honestly, I'm a little uncomfortable when I hear people say the guru word, because I don't know. I prefer to think of myself as a guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage, because I did not arrive at an enlightened place of having it all understanding of gratitude. And I'll talk about the origins. But the one thing I will say that I've become comfortable with over the last 5 years, because I'm not an academic expert. I'm not an intellectual expert, right? There's so many people that are so much more educated on the neuroscience and all of the things that happen in our brains and in our bodies. And I'm not a PhD. But what I do recognize that, and people have helped me understand this, my expertise is at helping people experience and express gratitude. And to me, that's where the magic happens. One of the things I say frequently when I host a gratitude encounter is, and we landed on this about 4 years ago, gratitude experienced is better than gratitude explained, right? You don't need to understand gratitude to experience it. And you don't need to understand what hormones are being released in your body as you express gratitude to feel the rush of endorphins, and that oxytocin flooding your body. You just know it feels good. And then just recently, I understood. So gratitude experienced is better than gratitude explained. And this is kind of where don't wait to thank comes in. Until you're expressing gratitude, you're not fully experiencing it, right? So there's something about, in other words, gratitude is not meant to be a purely personal and private experience. And yet that's how it's taught to so many people. Keep a gratitude journal, which I am not against gratitude journals. I journaled this morning myself, but I just think if journaling is the full extent of your gratitude experience, you're missing something,
So you're saying
right?
by
If all it
expressing
is,
it, putting it out there, as opposed to a
yeah,
journal is quite an internal experience. This is the whole thing about putting
exactly.
it out, expressing it.
Yeah, so there's a gentleman. He's known for the last lecture. He died of what we would consider a premature death. Uh, 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 Randy Proush, and he has this saying that's just become one of my favorites. Showing gratitude is the simplest yet most profound things one human can do for another. Right? Sharing gratitude, telling someone that you appreciate them and why, is one of the most profound things, and yet it's a very simple act. So we'll talk about this in a moment, but I will just say, and I saw it overnight in a message from Dallas in New Zealand, who's part of our Don't Wait to Thank family. She expressed gratitude to several people yesterday, and somebody sent her the message back and said, "This made my day." And that is the number one most frequently reported response we have when people express gratitude. The person to whom you're expressing gratitude usually has no idea that what they did impacted you so deeply or so positively. And when you tell them, "I'm grateful for you, and here's why," it usually does make their day.
So that's an interesting point, actually, which I can go on to what the Don't Wait to Thank experience is all about. So I can get that expressing, as in saying something out loud, is more powerful than just sort of writing it down. Is recognizing somebody publicly different from saying it to them? And what's the, because obviously they get hit, because some people, you could be very grateful, for example, for a parent. I was thinking, as I've been thinking about who I'm going to be grateful for over the next 30 days or so, lots of people are actually no longer with us, and I'm incredibly grateful to have had that experience from them. Doesn't mean I shouldn't express it, I feel, but they're not going to see it on LinkedIn. In fact, lots of people are not going to see things on LinkedIn, but that's not a reason not to be grateful. So just interested in the difference
Yeah.
in terms of telling them and expressing it versus sort of
Okay.
internalizing.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you a question. I want to respond to this with a question because I saw what you posted yesterday.
Yes.
And you acknowledged someone, and you talked about in your post, here's a little bit of PDA, right?
Yeah.
Public display of affection, or PDG, public display of gratitude. And what response, if any, did you receive from
He doesn't
acknowledging?
know yet. This is my husband. So anyone
Yeah.
listening, he's not really on LinkedIn. And so he hasn't seen it yet. So it's a little private thing to say, wonder how where someone will point it out to him, or I should also point it out to him and say it directly to him. As it turned out, we didn't see each other particularly yesterday.
That's
So
okay.
we'll find
So
out. We'll
we'll
watch it.
find out.
Yeah.
So, let me answer this question two ways. One way is, let's talk about what research has shown because of something you said about what if we express gratitude to someone that we have no way of giving them a card or sending them a message because they're passed on. Or in some cases, someone is estranged from someone, but they realize they want to express gratitude for that person, but it's not safe or it's not comfortable to put it in their hands or send it to them. So research shows there are three audiences that benefit when gratitude is expressed. And the most natural of these is the audience to whom we're expressing gratitude, right? We just talked about people usually respond saying, "You made my day. That made my day. I
Mm.
had no idea." But the very act that you take time to express gratitude, if you write out, and so there's several academic institutions that have done studies around gratitude letters, and people that have written letters and had no opportunity to deliver those letters because of estrangement or that the person they were acknowledging had passed on. They've actually done fMRI studies and see that the brain is still activated in you because you took time to express gratitude to someone. Uh, and so that's pretty amazing. So, okay, one audience is the recipient,
Yeah.
one audience is the expressor.
Yes.
The third audience, and this is kind of where some of that public display of gratitude is impactful. Anyone who witnesses gratitude express. Now, I realize we are on the HR Uprising podcast, and that means that many of you watching, listening, your focus is in the workplace. Well, you've probably seen this. What happens when a leader expresses gratitude to a team member? Other team members have the understanding that extra effort, creativity, going the extra mile, doing more than is expected is recognized, appreciated, and rewarded here. And so there is this belief, and hopefully it's an accurate belief, that, oh, if I exhibit those same kinds of traits and behaviors, I too maybe. So we're not wanting to create an expectation, right?
Yeah.
That it's guaranteed if I do it there, because they may not see, they may not be aware of your extra effort. But what it creates is this understanding. Oh, we have a culture, we have a company, we have leaders that value people, and they value people going the extra mile, and they acknowledge it publicly. Now, there's another benefit to this that's also documented. Imagine you're in a retail location, or imagine you're at the airline counter, right? And so many people have very difficult travel experiences
Yeah.
nowadays, and travel is disrupted and interrupted and delayed and all of this stuff. And the gate agents, they get the brunt of so much stuff. And maybe the person in front of you in line was really curt to the gate agent. And all of a sudden you come up and you are kind and you take a moment to acknowledge, hey, I appreciate that you are doing the best you can in a very difficult situation. And I saw that while that customer right in front of me lost their cool, you didn't. I appreciate that. I want to acknowledge that. Okay, what's the impact of that on a flight attendant, or on the gate agent or flight attendant? And then if the next person in line happen to overhear you, what's the possibility they might be a little kinder when they come up? And I've had people report this, being in the checkout at a grocery store and seeing a couple of people be short with the cashier, and then they come up and they be kind with the cashier. And then as they're walking out, they hear the next person in line behind them being kind as well. Maybe they would have been kind anyway.
Mm.
Maybe it's the influence. And I will tell you, here's a funny story that I remembered yesterday. Back in December, my wife, Gwen and I were going out to one of our favorite restaurants in the local town we live in. And I happened to have on a shirt. And I had forgotten what shirt I was wearing, right? And the shirt had a message on it. And we're walking up to the door, and a gentleman and his wife and children enter before us. And he looks back, and all of a sudden he holds the door open for us. And I go, oh, thank you. And he goes, well, I saw your shirt. How could I not hold the door for you?
Oh,
What was the message on my shirt? Humankind, be both.
oh, lovely.
Right. And so even that, just wearing an apparel, a piece of apparel that had a positive, uplifting, encouraging message, it had an impact on this gentleman. Now, he may or may not have held the door, but he called it out. Hey, the reason I'm doing this is the message on your shirt reminded me that that's how I want to be.
That's lovely. And in an environment where there is an awful lot of uh, negative noise, right? So balancing it out, or just is so key, really, because we're in the middle of elections and football, and there's a lot of haters stuff goes on out on social media. You have to be very careful of. And so this sort of whole activity that we're proposing, or that's going on in July, is balancing it. Now, I want to come on to where you came from with this, where you started, but So I'm just quite interested in, I really like the fact you're saying, so yes, the person who hears it, that's great. And particularly in an organization, we should be recognizing people, and I can see the cultural knock on to the individual and to others seeing it. But you do feel better for thinking about what you're grateful for. It's very easy to take things for granted, isn't it, till you have a life experience in terms of that. But one of the things is, I don't know whether this is more British than American. Oh, it's a bit awkward putting it out there, right? It's
No, it
tricky to
is.
do
It is.
it.
It is. It is not. It is not distinctively British. There may be a higher propensity of it, but it's not. Part of it is personality styles, right? Whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, and Lucinda, that is one of the reasons that we have found there's this extra benefit to doing it in writing, is that you can leave it for someone. You don't always have to necessarily make a public exchange
Yeah.
of this expressing of gratitude. And there are a lot of people who leave a card, and okay, so it's almost like what you did for your husband. You planted a message in public. You don't know when he'll see it, if he'll ever see it, right? But other people saw it. And I will tell you, I saw it, I read it, and as I read it, I smiled, right? It's like, oh, wow, look at this. The fact that you all work together, has it been 15 years? Is that
Hmm.
what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And work from home together.
Yeah.
Running your own business, it's not easy.
No, but so there are inspiring moments of that. But let me go back. So it was actually a little over 2 years ago now. Um, and it's funny, on this gratitude journey, I remember some exact dates, like July 2nd and 8th, that
Yeah.
we'll get to. But May 19th, 2022, I just happened to be on my monthly standing meeting with Susie Consoli, who manages our website and some of our marketing. And she is a brilliant young woman, beautiful mind. And just as this, hey, what's going on? I happened to mention that on Friday, May 20th, I was having an opportunity to present some ideas to a guy who was recruiting speakers for a company and their event that I would love to be included at. And she goes, well, Kevin, what are you going to say to them? And I'm like, hey, the usual. To which Susie goes, you can't give the usual, right? You got to up your game. And so we get into this conversation and we're talking about this. And I said, well, we could do this. We could do this. And she says, Kevin, I've watched you sign off your emails and sign off videos by saying, hey, I hope you know I'm grateful for you. What could we do with that? Boing, an idea. I'm like, well, Susie, I've seen some little cards. What if we made two versions of an I'm grateful for you card? One of those being like the size of a business card, and one of those being a 4x6 note card. And the back would be blank, and the front would just say, I'm grateful for you. And so it would be a vehicle for sharing a message. And she goes, oh, that'd be great. Well, could you help me with that? So anyway, the next day I have this conversation with this young man, Harrison. And we have 30 minutes, 20 minutes into the conversation. I've shared all these ideas. And Lucinda is kind of like, imagine a card about this size, right?
Yeah.
Because the cards didn't exist. And then imagine a card a little bigger. And we got through with the 20 minutes into the conversation. She said, Kevin, I'm putting you on the short list. Well, what does that mean? Well, I don't have the authority to hire you, but I'm recommending the people that do consider you. Well, that's wonderful, Harrison. May I ask why? And he goes, well, one, I love your passion, and they would love your passion and your enthusiasm, but it's that little card. Like the little card. Why? He said, well, most things that happen at a conference, people have forgotten by the time the conference is over. And they've certainly forgotten by the time they get back home and get back into things and catch up. But if everybody that left the conference carried one of those little cards with them and had a stash of them, and they could give them away in our restaurants anytime they see an employee going above and beyond, doing something extraordinary, or they even encounter a guest that's doing something extraordinary to help another guest, right? Like a young mom with kids, and there's a guest that helps them get settled and gets the high chair or something. Goes, can you imagine the impact? And so I'm thinking, he said, so, I'm sending you over. So I'm thinking, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the next week, I'm going to get a call and I'm going to be booked to speak. Well, by Wednesday, the call hasn't come. And it hits me. I'm like, if this is a good idea, why don't we do it anyway? Why wait? And so we printed 2,500 of these cards. This is the impact card, and 500 of the note cards. And then Susie, someone on her team, the designer, has this idea of packaging them in an envelope. And when they sent me the envelope, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a bit big.
Ooh. So
That's
just for,
gaudy.
for listeners who've just seen like a business card size, I'm grateful for you. And then we've just seen a postcard size, I'm grateful for you. And the envelope is
like a
very
billboard.
impactful. Yeah, absolutely. It's bright. It's navy with yellow. I'm grateful for you writing. Wonderful.
And I'm like, well, that's kind of big to put in the mail. But what the designer saw, fine, it did happen a few months later. When I speak at events, we will see these in the audience. Like there was one event, I was speaking to a Danish pharmaceutical company, and these were taped under everybody's chair. And then there's a moment when we say, hey, look under your chair. There's a prize for you. And everybody pulls out this. And then when everybody in an audience holds this up,
Wow.
it shows on a photo op, right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So they were thinking of that. I wasn't thinking of that. But here's what we did, Lucinda. We packaged these. We sent 10 of these and 5 of these, 10 of the impact cards, if you're not watching, 5 of the legacy cards, the note cards, to 100 people around the world, people that are part of our gratitude ambassador community. And I didn't tell them what I was sending. I just said, hey, we've got a new experiment we're doing in expressing gratitude. If you want to be a part, drop your address here. So we sent 100 of these kits around the world. And literally, I mean, not every country, but they were in Australia, they're in New Zealand, in Japan, parts of Asia, all over the UK and Europe, South America, Central America, North America. And as people started using these cards to express gratitude, that's when we started hearing, you made my day, you made my day. So that was May 19th, 2 years ago. And then there was another woman who I sent cards to. Her name's Crystal. I sent cards to Crystal. And Crystal responded, oh my gosh, I love these cards, Kevin. And she goes, I have a note I had written to my grandmother, and I didn't send it. And now she's passed. And oh, how I wish I had sent. So Lucinda, now there's this other, much deeper, more meaningful, philosophical, level of don't wait to thank. If there's somebody that crosses your mind today and you think, I want to express gratitude, don't wait to thank. Do it now, right? Because I'm not trying to be more, but it might be your last chance.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Well, it's no regrets, isn't it? If you say things positively as opposed to negatively, which you could regret, that's just getting out and saying those things. Absolutely. And yeah, expressing it, and just generally that level of good feeling that comes with being positive and being thankful for stuff, as opposed to just being a bit automaton as you go through life.
But you don't do everything. And this is why it is so important. I believe it's so important for leaders to acknowledge the contribution of other people on their team. And nothing, that's a bold blanket statement I'm about to make, but I think it might be true. I'll make it and then we can discuss it. Nothing demoralizes people more or more quickly than a leader taking credit for their contribution.
Certainly. I remember a great leader who's someone who I would recognize, and who used to come and do leadership training for us when I was doing management training for groups of people. And he would come in and he said that when he went from being sort of mid-level manager to being C-suite, it wasn't quite going as well as it should have been going, and he got a coach following him around. And basically the feedback was that he needed not to be the most impressive person in the room. It was now his turn to be impressed, and to do, and it's a key transition. It's much more impactful to show that you recognize someone for being impressive, or to recognize others. But the other thing as well, I do quite a lot on feedback, and there's lots of evidence out there in terms of driving high performance, and it's about people having clarity, but it's also about getting feedback. Now that could be positive, and it could also be corrective feedback, but that actual giving people feedback, using our feedback muscles, including recognition. And the best way to do that, to make it safe, is for leaders and managers and everybody actually to be in the habit of giving specific constructive, positive feedback, not constructive, but positive feedback, but recognizing when things are going right. I mean, there's that old book, The 1 Minute Manager, catch people doing things right. If you catch people doing things right, if you have to correct performance, then that feels safe. It doesn't feel like you're picking on them. So it's a great habit, really. It's a muscle. And I suppose that's part of me, what I say about this July initiative. Okay, you're thinking more widely. I'm bringing my whole self to LinkedIn. So I recognize my school friends today. But so you're thinking, you're being that whole person, but it is very much about, really, let's get into the habit of creating those and using those feedback, those recognition muscles, those gratitude muscles. And it benefits us because it's one of those things, the more things you look for to be grateful for, the more things you see, and vice versa, isn't it? You get what you look for.
And I so appreciate you mentioning this, bringing this into the conversation. There are 2 points that I'd love to unpack with you on that. And I love that you mentioned Ken Blanchard, the 1 Minute Manager, right? Catch people doing something right. When people ask, well, what do we express gratitude for? Right? Especially in the workplace. There are a couple of things. There are two. I'm a big fan of the law of three, right? So I think of 3 things a leader can do to activate gratitude in your leadership as a practice. You see, right? The first is to see. You see when somebody does something extraordinary, when
Yes.
somebody gives
Notice it.
extra effort, when somebody brings their creativity or their sense of humor to a situation and it diffuses something that's really tense for the whole team. And all of a sudden, right, somebody's just made a little appropriate remark and it just kind of diffuses that intense moment that everybody, hey, acknowledge them for their insight, for their bringing that moment of levity that broke the tension where everybody felt. Acknowledge that. So see the moment, right? First off, you have to see it. And then when you see it as a leader, seize the moment. Right?
Yes.
Do something. Just don't go, oh yeah, well, they're always that extraordinary. They're always, no, 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 no. See it, seize it. And this is where the cards come in. And if you don't have the cards, you can do this with other vehicles or your own card. But what if you you saw something extraordinary happen, you seize the moment, you pull out a card and you write a little note on the back. Thank you for the extra effort you gave on that project. Or, hey, I appreciate your sense of humor. You saved the meeting today with that remark, right? And give them a card, call it out. When you sees, and then you give them a card, you just sealed that moment in their heart and mind. And Vicky O'Grady Longo, she's given out more of these cards than anyone in the workplace. She's given out over 1,000 cards in 2 years, Lucinda.
Wow.
She observes something that happens almost, I don't want to say it happens often. When people see the card, right, they read the words on the front, the backs of the cards are blank, and that's intentional. That's the space for you to write. So people see these 4 words on the front, I'm grateful for you. They turn it over, and often as they're reading your message, a tear starts trickling down the eye. And then they take the card and they often press it to their heart. And that's when it hit me. That is a sealing that's happening,
Yeah.
right?
That's a gift.
People, it's a gift, and they're sealing that memory, that moment in their mind. So see, sees, seal, and then the other, I teach the ACE, what we call ACE method of gratitude, expressing gratitude. Well, what are you doing? Well, you appreciate. That's the A in ACE. Appreciate somebody for their gifts, talents, abilities, appreciate them for their contribution, right? So if you're wondering, what do I think? Back to the point, when you see something good happening, right? Appreciate it. Celebrate is the C. Celebrate that this person, maybe some personal challenges they're having in their life, and yet they still went above and beyond. Maybe you know that they have a sick child or a sick parent that they're caring for, and still, in spite of those challenges, they show up and they do amazing things at work. You want to celebrate that, right? You want to celebrate the finesse with which they do something. not just the result, right? This is what happens in so many companies. Results are celebrated, or
Yeah.
attendance is celebrated, right? We're giving you your 1 year, 5 year, 10 year plaque for, well, can't we celebrate more than the fact that they showed up every day, right? Let's
Yeah.
take it level. And then the E, so appreciate, celebrate. E is elevate. What if you elevate the way they exemplify company values or personal values? And when you're uh, expressing gratitude, you can elevate them for how they exemplify integrity, how they exemplify displaying trust, how they exemplify going the extra mile, whatever those values are of your company values or personal values, right? So many companies have values that are displayed on the walls, but they're not really lived out in the halls. And when you call this out, and when you're acknowledging it, and when you're appreciating it, that is growing that value in your company. And it's giving people a real life evidence to see values in action. So see, seize, and seal.
Got it.
And then appreciate, celebrate, and elevate. Very practical ways that you can put gratitude to work in your life
And
and in your.
I love having practical ways. And I think we'll finish on a quick practical in a moment in terms of how people can get
Oh yeah.
involved in the whole program during July. But one of the things that really resonated from those things that you've brought to life really elegantly there is the fact that you've got to, for someone to hold it to their heart, for it to seal that emotion, to shed a tear, it's got to be something meaningful
Ah.
and sincere that you've written on there, right? It's not
So
something
there's another
trite.
one. There's another little formula. Simple plus sincere and specific expressions of gratitude are
Yeah,
significant, right? Keep it simple, make it specific, and be sincere. And when
absolutely.
you do those things, it's significant. And when I do a presentation, I have those as three interlocking circles: simple, sincere, significant, equals. I mean, simple, sincere, uh,
Specific.
specific equals significant,
Yes.
times consistent equals transformational,
Yeah.
right? When you start doing this consistently on your team or in your company, you experience a cultural transformation. So simple plus sincere and specific expressions of gratitude are significant. Do it consistently, you'll have a transformational effect. Now, I've got it before we forget: July 2nd, July 8th.
Yes, I was going to ask you, July the 8th, yes.
Okay, so, and it's funny. Wow, today is July the 2nd. When you said that, it hit me. So 5 years ago today, Steve Foreign and Steve joined me on a podcast I hosted then. It's now an inactive podcast, but that was episode 101 of the Higher Purpose podcast. And on episode 101, we announced, Steve had written a book on gratitude. We had this conversation on gratitude, and we announced that we were launching our very first 10-day gratitude challenge that started July 8th. And this was 2019. So 5 years ago, Lucinda, July 2nd and July 8th were really significant dates on that journey. So when I heard you say the second half,
Ah, I
it
knew
took
you'd
me
had something
back.
to do with gratitude before. I think I was in contact with you then. I feel like it was
Yeah.
before to
I'm
then.
pretty
That would
sure
make
you
sense. I
did one.
remember the 10-day gratitude journey and that podcast. It might have been podcast, in fact, that linked it. So just in the interest of our guys, because we're coming to the end of our time slot, if someone wants well, first of all, very grateful to all the listeners, which I love, and the fact that HR Uprising, we've got this sort of elevate. I like the link between that and HR Uprising. It's all about elevating people and being grateful for the people that do so much within an organization in terms of HR and supporting others and
Yes,
encouraging
yes.
cultures of positive feedback and recognition. But this is really good for you personally, right? It's something also I feel that this is something to do with your own personal well-being. So HR often don't have time to look after themselves, and I think this is a little thing that you can do just to make yourself also feel good for all the things to recognize. So I'm following this on LinkedIn. I'm going to put my post out on LinkedIn through July. Is that what you recommend, Kevin? How can people
Okay.
become part of the movement?
Yeah. So, gosh, there are a few ways, but LinkedIn, because that's the primary social media platform I use. So every day on LinkedIn, we'll be posting and reminding people. We're using the hashtag DWTT24. Don't wait to thank 24, DWTT24. If you want others to see and celebrate your post, you can join. And Lucinda, back to this personal practice, you can do this in as little as 3 to 5 minutes a day. This is not a big lift, right? What we're asking is for people to express gratitude to at least one person a day, every day in July. Now, yesterday I was in a conversation and somebody said, and that's like the big hope. Well, and you can continue past July as well, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? That's the hope, is that people have such a good experience expressing gratitude every day in July that they continue beyond. But we're asking that. So, and you can go to don'twaittothank.com. Don'twaittothank.com takes you to the landing page where all of this information is housed. And we also, we were looking, trying to think, what is the easiest to use? What is a platform with what we call the least amount of friction? Because I'm a big fan of communities. I've used a lot of community platforms, but that requires people to sign up for an account and register an account and maybe download an app. So we created don'twaittothank.com. Don't wait to thank .substack.com. So if you know of Substack, Substack is a platform that was initially created some years ago for newsletters, but Substack is a powerful platform, and you can have an email dropped into your inbox every day. So there'll just be a reminder once a day about Don't Wait to Thank, if you want to get that. And then there are other things we created, and this is why I talk about the creativity of the team. We created a spinning wheel. So it has 31 entries. If you're like, well, gosh, I'm happy to participate, but I don't know who to thank today. Well, come to don'twaittothank.com or don'twaittothanksubstack.com, spin the wheel and get an idea. So there are things like, thank a public service person, whether that's law enforcement or a sanitation worker or fire or EMS, someone who encouraged you in a tough time. So there's this wheel that you can spin and get help. We have a calendar you can download if you want to track your progress. A friend from Scotland helped us create a journal last week. So we have the Ripple Effect, a journal, print journal, simple little print journal that's available on Amazon, and it's available on Amazon.uk. So there are multiple ways to get people involved and to allow people to connect and share. But the biggest thing is simply express gratitude to someone a day, every day in July. And you know what? If you miss a day, that's okay too. Just get back up, do it again tomorrow. This is not about perfection. It's about persistence, and it's about connecting with people, because you said this at the beginning. There's so many difficult things going on in the world, and there's so many people who are overwhelmed with so many things in life. And you might be the person that, by expressing gratitude, gives them a boost of hope, gives them an expression of kindness, gives them a word of encouragement. Oh, and another one, I saw somebody post yesterday that I hope a lot of people do. Somebody wrote, what about thanking teachers, right? And I heard somebody just 2 weeks ago talk about the influence their 9th grade English teacher has had on their life and their career. And she had the opportunity to thank this teacher a couple of times. And what that means to a teacher who spent 20, 25, 30 years toiling away in a classroom to learn, oh, they made a difference.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, my old maths teacher came to my brain first of all, and she's no longer with us. Kevin, I'm going to have to be grateful to you and say thank you so much for joining us on the HR Uprising podcast. I really hope people are inspired to follow. We'll put all the links in the show notes of hruprising.com. You can go to the links, link in with Kevin. You'll soon see the hashtags, follow these things, that get on, feel grateful and take part. I highly recommend it. Thank you, Kevin.
Lucinda, I am so grateful for you. Thank you for the invitation to join HR Uprising. And hey, you HR Uprising person, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. And please join us on this journey.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I really hope you found this week's episode useful and enjoyable. If you did, perhaps you could recommend us to a friend or colleague, or give us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps new listeners to find us. Now, you can access links to any of the information mentioned in this show via the website www.hruprising.com. Further free resources are also available at www.actus.co.uk. There you can also find out more about our software and training solutions. Finally, why not join our LinkedIn group, the HR Uprising, to share ideas and collaborate with other like-minded people professionals. Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast.